Hey everyone, welcome back to another video in the beautiful outdoors. It's a bit cold, but I am committed to this idea of making booktube videos in nature. And yeah, I am very excited for today's video. It's gonna be a bit of a ranty one, maybe. I just finished preparing my videos for the best fantasy and sci-fi series slash books that I've read, like my favorite ones. And before I get to that video, I wanted to put up some of the most popular series, or I guess just a list of 10 series that I've DNF'd, so that when those other videos come, people are not like, why is this not in that list or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is also part of you, my audience, knowing what I like, what I don't like. And so this is just some, series that I have DNF'd and I don't plan on continuing. So we're gonna start with a big one, and this is the Wheel of Time. I have read 4 books into the Wheel of Time. I started maybe 3-4 years ago, and I think at the start I was kind of excited to get into these modern classic fantasy series. I read the first book. I was not necessarily like super impressed, but then I read the second one and I really liked it. Especially the ending is so exciting and like cinematic, and I was very excited to see where that would lead to. And then book 3 was a huge disappointment for me. I thought it was very slow, and I realized that I was not connecting to the characters, and that is often a big problem for me. And I think the what are they called, the Emon's Field 5, or however many they are. I don't know. I think in these first 3 books were just not very interesting characters. They were very flat and like one-dimensional, and I know that they grow a lot throughout the series, but just in these first books, I was just not connecting to them. And especially Perrin, he was my favorite one after book 2, and I think in the entirety of book 3, like they don't really like show up so much. And then I read book 4, which is where people say like, oh, you really need to at least give it a try up to book 4, because that's when the series really like starts and like becomes its own and blah blah blah. And I read it and I was also kind of underwhelmed. There's these couple of chapters, or maybe just a single chapter, that is very famous for being like impressive, and I gotta say I really liked it. But yeah, I felt like if that was like the big wow that was going to swing me, and it didn't really do. Why continue? I mean, especially like thinking of the slog and whatnot. So Wheel of Time, it's not for me. We're not gonna continue with a sci-fi one, and this is the Hyperios Cantos by Dan Simmons. I've read the first 2 books, so that is Hyperion and the Fall of Hyperion, and there's 2 more books in that series, and it's like Endymion and something Endymion. And I gotta say that I loved Hyperion. The first book is one of my favorite like sci-fi classics. Not all of the stories are great for me. If you don't know, this is a story that follows 6 or 7 pilgrims that are sent on this mission to they were sent to a mission to this planet called, I guess the planet is Hyperion, and there are these like time traveling tombs, and there's this shrike creature and some like intergalactic invasion that is threatening the empire kind of setup, and they are sent to these pilgrimage, and each of the characters, they have like a chapter or like a short story where they narrate part of their life, what motivates them, and these are all very different in style, and some people hate some people love some. I am personally a huge fan of the first story, that one of the priest. This is kind of like echo horror, and I also really liked the one of the it's like an archaeologist or something, and his daughter. That one was amazing. Those are definitely the standouts for me. And then I read The Fall of Hyperion, and I really did not like it. I felt like it really expands on the world, and I think if you were looking more for like the world building and what is happening outside of these like small pilgrimage, you will definitely get into that, and you have like more of a large scale conflict and new factions, and it goes way more into like the tech part of science fiction, and I was just not at all interested. I was completely bored out of my mind. So yeah, I think you can still read the Hyperion book as a standalone. I mean, it's I think a very poetic and like it's a very beautiful ending, I would say. It's not completed, obviously, so if you really want to know what happens, you gotta read the next one. But even like I feel like even beyond the world building and everything new that we learn about this world, just thinking about the stories themselves of the pilgrimages, I think I wanted more of that. That's why I wanted to read the continuation. I just wanted to know what happens with the pilgrims, and we didn't get a lot of that, and that which we get is not very great. So I did not feel very satisfied. Um, let's move on to one that is a kind of a sci-fantasy blend, and this is the Winnowing Flame. This is a very, very fascinating world. So this is one where the world was very, very intriguing to me, because you have a series, like a species of beings that are basically like superhumans, and they have been in charge of protecting humans from like these outside forces for a long time. And these species, they feed off of a tree that produces this like sap thing, and for whatever reason the tree is dying. So this species is basically unable to eat what they usually eat, and they um, turn to basically drinking human blood. So it's kind of like a twist on the vampire species, but human blood is not like as pure or as like nutritious, I guess, as the sap of the tree they usually eat. So they actually become sick out of drink. So it's like they need to drink human blood to like stay alive, but that also sickens them and it's killing them. And in the cusp of all of this, we get like an out of the world invasion of these kind of bug insect like species. And so it's like, whoa, what are we gonna do now that the like this vampire species that has been protecting us for generations is no longer able to do so? And obviously, I mean, the other thing that's kind of interesting is that it's been a long time since the last time the vampires protected humans. So of course, over like the centuries since then, humans have become very aggressive and like afraid of these species. They kind of push them out, and I mean, they are obviously killing humans. So why wouldn't they be angry and yeah, like aggressive towards them? So it's a very complicated like world, and we follow a kind of found family group of characters that is trying to discover what's going on and save everyone. And the first book, I think, was very exciting because, again, the world building is fascinating. I think even just trying to describe it sometimes is a bit hard or convoluted. Um, but I just didn't fall in love with the characters so much. Kind of the same issue as I had with Wheel of Time. There is one character that is like a lesbian captain slash adventurer, and she is super cool. I really liked her. And then you follow a witch that is kind of a teenager. She comes from I forgot to mention that, but there's this like coven of witches, and they have this super powerful fire magic, and they fly on giant bats. It's crazy. I know, it's like super wild. Um, and the other guy is a one of these kind of vampire uh, fighters, and they also have like a relationship that is kind of romantic. It's not the focus of the story, but it just came off so wrong to me. I don't know, like their interactions was yeah, I did not really like how it came off of the page. And then I read book two, very excited actually to see where the story would go. And unfortunately, I had so many issues with that book. We get a couple of characters that I thought were just so annoying and like just not taking smart decisions. There is a lot of bickering. I will say there is like, not to just hate on these books. There, as I said, the world building is amazing, and there is a lot of like aerial combat because yeah, like these insect people, they have like flying machines, and then the humans have like, I will not say much, but there are some like flying creatures, and so there is a lot of like combat in the air that is pretty cool. but yeah, I was just so annoyed reading the second book that I just could not push myself to continue. So that is The Winnowing Flame, unfortunately. The next one is also going to be a very popular one, and that is the Children of Time series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And yeah, Children of Time is one of my favorite sci-fi books of all time. I love this book, and if you don't know about it, it's a kind of a thought experiment. These kind of generational sci-fi books where you have a virus that is supposed to accelerate the sentience of monkeys, I think, and for because of an accident, it ends up landing on a planet, and there are like some spiders. So there is this civilization of sentient spiders that develops in the planet, and you follow the POV of the spiders, which is like amazing. And yeah, basically, it's a story about how a spider species would develop a human-like civilization in terms of like commerce and telecommunications and warfare and interaction with other species, that being our own, because you also follow a human ship that is flying around this, or like flying through space, and they come in contact with the spider species after thousands of years where they've been developing. So you follow this story over like thousands of years, and it's so fascinating. And I loved. I think the author himself is a zoologist, or was, or something. So I think he put a lot of work in thinking about like the biology of things. And yeah, it's just a fascinating thought experiment. Not super character driven, so if that's the kind of sci-fi you like, this might not be for you. But if you like these kind of weird thought experiments, like let's see what happens with this idea, I would really recommend this. But unfortunately, I read the second one, which is Children of Ruin, which is, I think, in premise kind of similar. This time with octopi, which in my head was going to be even better. But the tone of the story is so different. This one is more of like a sci-fi thriller, and you have this third kind of species or intelligence that is in the background, kind of mwahaha lurking. And yeah, I don't know. I did not like at all this book. It's one of my worst books of 2024. For sure, the most disappointing one that I read. And I mean, Adrian Tchaikovsky writes super chunky books. So when things are not happening, like you just gotta read through a ton of pages of nothing. So I don't know. That just did not work for me. That tonal shift. And even though you have some parts of like Children of Time, like the story kind of carries over, you can definitely read Children of Time as a standalone, which is my recommendation. So that was another one. Then let's go into another fantasy one, and this is going to be, well, kind of fantasy sci-fi, I guess, but this is The Great Cities duology by N.K. Jemisin. I am a big fan of her, the fifth season, and what's that? The Broken Earth trilogy. It's one of my favorite books, and so I was really excited to read something else by the author, and I tried the Great Cities duology. I think the first one is The City We Became, which is about New York City and these entities which represent or like embody each of New York City's boroughs, and so they are kind of fighting these, yeah, like Lovecraftian force that is, endangering or like attacking New York City. So it's, much more of a like action packed, a bit less serious work, but it has a lot. I would imagine that the author herself is from New York City, because I think she put a lot of love in these characters and making each of them feel like, like someone that would come from that section of New York City. But unfortunately, for me, the themes were a bit too on the nose and a bit too heavy-handed. This like alien force is like all represented by like white colors, and like this white woman, and the one person, like I don't know. I don't want to get so much into the details, but it just felt a bit like oh, like white people are like evil. And I mean, honestly, sometimes it is like that in real life, but it just felt so like one dimensional. And at the same time, like the characters, I mean, I don't come from New York City, but they felt a bit like caricatures to me. I thought it was like a funny idea. I think it's really creative, but the theme work just did not land for me. So that was that. Let's go to another one, and this is another very popular one, and that is Murderbot by Martha Wells, I think. And this was super popular like a couple years ago. I remember reading the first book. I think it's called All Systems Red. When during the pandemic, like just when the pandemic started, and I thought I had a lot of I had a lot of fun. I thought it was like a super creative like spin on the robot kind of genre, and like what does it mean to be human? And I think it just like was what I needed it to be. I think there are a lot of like short stories and maybe a couple of novels in this world. But this is nothing against like the story itself. I just feel like I didn't need more. So I would still fully recommend reading the first book in the Murderbot series. It's super funny. It's also quite short, so it's not a big like commitment. And yeah, I think having this robot that is kind of sassy, kind of sarcastic, and who likes watching soap operas, but also cares about his, or sorry, their crew, was just like a fun action short story. So definitely one to recommend. Let's go into another one, and this is also going to be sci-fi, and it's the Semiosis trilogy. I don't know if the trilogy has another name, but the first book is called Semiosis. And this was a book that I was super excited to read because the premise the premise is basically that you follow a group of humans that have landed on this planet. I mean, it's like very far future sci-fi, and there is this sentient plant species on the planet, and it's basically this colony of humans that needs to, survive this environment and collaborate with the environment, and like, yeah, there's a lot of internal drama and like internal conflict, but also external conflicts from the things that live in this planet. And I think this was an issue that I had with like expectations. I was expecting this to be kind of similar to Children of Time, where you follow like generations of humans and their interactions with a species and how that develops over a long period of time. But unfortunately, that is kind of true in this story. You do follow a couple of like generational jumps, but half of the story at least is following a single character, so you don't really get that like overarching long-term development between like the humans and these plant species. So that was one thing that I didn't like, or at least again was not really what I expected out of this book. And then the other thing that I didn't like was like the few things we get of this interaction between humans and these plant species. I just didn't think it was like so interesting. I think a lot of the world building was creative, but it felt a bit more like fantastical, if you know what I mean. Like, I think in Children of Time, the reasons why, or like the way the spiders developed and some of the interactions they have felt very organic to me. It felt like yeah, I could see like if spiders built a human-like civilization, I could see how that would be the way they built like a telecommunication network. Whereas in this other one, Semiosis, it was a bit more like fantastical with how like the plant interacted and I don't know. I think it's very like valuable. It's a very valuable story, but I just don't have any interest in continuing with the rest of the series. So that is that. And let's get to a couple last ones. So another sci-fi, very quickly. This is called The Memory Cult Empire. This is a duology which has a really, really hard name, so I will not try to pronounce it, but it's like Taxi something. And this one was also a bummer because I was super excited. First of all, the name of this book is amazing. And this follows a woman who is sent by her. I mean, she comes from a faction of people that live in a satellite station, basically, and she's sent to the capital planet of this empire to replace basically the previous representative of her station. And the whole gist of this world is that from like one successor to the next, they have this kind of chip where they get like all the memories of their predecessor. So you have like a lot of information about the empire and like the status of things and like the people and the politics and the economy. Like you have all of these Wikipedia of information like just downloaded into your brain. And the problem with her is that that chip kind of didn't work, and I think she gets like a really, really outdated one. So there's a lot of missing information, and she obviously arrives to the planet in a very like interesting political situation, and there's a lot of like internal revolt in the city and whatnot. So there's obviously conspiracies and things she needs to discover about the empire. This is a rebellion story at the end of the day. And I think for that to make sense or for that to work, you really need to make sure that the main character cares about the cause they are fighting for. And I just never got to see that really. And I never got her to like experience any sort of connection with the people she was fighting for, especially because again, she's living in the capital all the time. So like she takes like maybe like a couple of trips, like a couple of blocks outside of the castle, but it's like that connection never felt genuine. But I gotta say that I think the setup and the world building is very interesting, and there is a sapphic like subplot. So if you like some romance in your sci-fi, I do think this is like one to try. But to me, I think I'm just kind of picky with these rebellion stories because we've read so many of them. Yeah. And last but definitely not least, I wanted to save this one for the end, and that is going to be The Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson. I have only read one book in this series, and that is Elantris, one of Brandon Sanderson's first books. Maybe not published, but at least written. And I actually really liked it. I think I had an interesting time with this book because most people in the community like rank it very low, maybe because they started with some of Branderson's more recent works, and I mean obviously I would assume he's a better author now than he was back then. So if you read, I don't know, Mistborn or the Way of Kings, what's that called, the Stormlight Archive, and then you go back and read Elantris, maybe you see like a drop in the quality of his writing. But I don't have that experience. I've just read Elantris, so I couldn't tell. And I thought it was a blast. I thought I had such a good time. The characters were interesting. They, I think, start very tropey as you would expect them, but by the end of the book, all of them have changed significantly, and they go through interesting, like, arcs. Another thing that I really liked was the magic system. I think that is something that people praise of Brandon Sanderson a lot, and I can confirm that even just with the small taste I got of his writing, like the magic system and the resolution of the conflict in terms of like the magic was so like like honestly it was mind-blowing to me at the time. But without getting into a lot of details, I just don't want to support Brandon Sanderson. I don't have anything against him as a person, but I know that he donates a lot of his money to the Mormon church, and unfortunately I do not want to support that, and I think there are a lot of queer people that have suffered because of institutions like this. And so because I know, and he's been quite public about it, that he donates a lot of the money he makes of like his Kickstarter campaigns and his books to the church, I just do not want to support that. And yeah, maybe that is a topic for another video, but the moment I knew about that, I just decided that I would not continue with the Cosmere. As I said, I really liked Elantris, so it's nothing against that book in particular. But yeah, these are some of the popular series that I have DNF'd over the most recent years, and let me know if you liked any of these, if you didn't like them, what other popular series do you have DNF'd and why. And yeah, I hope you like this video, and yeah, see you on the next one. Have a good day. Bye bye.